Today, we are breaking down bounce back players in Dynasty Fantasy Football. You guys know as much as we do that market value is a huge part of Dynasty, and all of these guys from a calendar year's time have lost a ton of market value. The most predictive metric in fantasy, we want to talk about yards per route run and volume and rushing upside for quarterbacks. The most predictive metric for fantasy, as simple as it sounds, is actually previous year's fantasy production. So with each of these players, we're going to kind of sort out how much of this is recency bias, how much, value they've lost, what is warranted. Did we have it right maybe a year ago and we're kind of overreacting now? Is it right now? Maybe they should have been going this low before. And somewhere in the middle, I would imagine, is where we're going to land on a lot of these players. So Danny, we're going to go through basically the top 5 to 10 players or so who's lost the most ADP value in a calendar year. And we're going to go kind of benchmark wise, top 25 Dynasty asset, top 50 Dynasty asset, top 75 Dynasty asset, top 100 asset in terms of Superflex, PPR startups. We've gotten this data from Dynasty Data Lab at DecoFF does good work over there. So we're pulling this kind of from real sleeper leagues that we can look at.
For sure. And obviously, we're going to be attacking this from a generalized standpoint. For the majority, a lot of you guys in your own micro league markets would have seen, for example, in some of your leagues last year, maybe Christian McCaffrey was a 1-2 turn pick. Maybe if you're in more of a sharper, young asset value accrual league, he was more of a 3-4 turn pick. This data is basically just aggregating the majority of those leagues, being able to combine what can give us the best look at what the overall macro market would look at. And to be honest, when you're looking at some of these picks in terms of how high they went in startups, there were guys that you were taking as pillars of your team, foundational assets of your team that we look a year later and they are not nearly the same asset they once were.
Yeah, and let's start with the top 25 Dynasty assets. So these guys, these 5 here,
foundational,
you have to spend a high pick on. And like you kind of made reference to, Christian McCaffrey was going off the board 17th overall. That's factoring in probably non-FSE leagues. You and I were not taking him that far. But of course, people play in a wide array of leagues. You look at some of these ADPs and you can't even believe them. Anthony Richardson was the 11th overall player in startups last year. CJ Stroud, the 3rd overall player. Breece Hall, the 18th overall player. Kyler, the 19th overall player. So with each set of these guys, we're going to go through 5 names for top 25, 10 names for top 50, I think 8 or 9 names for top 75, and then another 10 names for top 100. We'll just ask the same questions. Why'd they lose value? Is this a market overreaction or is it not? And what should we do now? Are we buying at these prices? Are we thinking, this is probably about where they should be going? Are we even continuing to sell beyond? We think they're going to lose more value, that kind of thing. So, we'll kind of determine what the reason was to start here.
Yeah, and it's a fascinating topic of conversation because, like you said, these guys were going in the top 25. These were once assets people were viewing as legit, like I said, foundational pieces to their team. Anthony Richardson, Christian McCaffrey, CJ Stroud, Breece Hall, Kyler Murray, all going to be one of the first 2 selections of your team if you were taking them in startups last year.
Yeah, and a lot of these guys were worth multiple first-round picks and, of course, are not worth multiple first-round picks now. And we'll talk about what their market value is kind of at the end of this with each of these sections. But let's start with, why did these guys lose value? So it could be probably for one of 3 reasons. I would say poor play, injury, and like kind of age decline is probably what we're looking at for most of the time here. Richardson, CJ Stroud, Breece Hall, and Kyler Murray all lost value here, probably because we expected them to be better than they were. Specifically with Richardson, we definitely expected him to be better. But CJ Stroud, we all thought he was going to take that upper echelon, best quarterback in the NFL kind of step, and we didn't necessarily see that. And then Breece Hall and Kyler Murray, both disappointing in their own respect. Were they terrible? No. They were top 16 RB / top 12 quarterback, but we expected more out of those players.
Yeah, for A-Rich, like you said, A-Rich was a guy that we had higher expectations on. Obviously, the dual threat Konami aspect was always the reason why he was going high in startups, but we were also under the belief that he would be solidified as potentially going on the path towards being a franchise quarterback. We convinced ourselves of a guy like Shane Steichen. Obviously, Anthony Richardson, to say the least, had that much of an up and down season.
Yeah, and I think if you guys selected Anthony Richardson in 2023 rookie drafts with a top 3 pick, probably 102, 103, potentially even 101. Some people probably even took him over Bijan Robinson. Last year's run out of him playing a couple games, showing you that Konami code upside, and then having that sell window where he was the 11th overall asset in startups, at least a fringe first rounder for most leagues. That was great news. If you weren't high on Anthony Richardson, for example, you could have gotten out for a big bag of assets last year. But if you held on to Richardson, you can see he's worth the 103rd overall asset. He went from a multiple first round pick guy to probably a mid to late second in terms of rookie pick value on the open market. So he was 100% the biggest loser. Like you see, he lost 92 overall spots of ADP. Like that was a whiff if you drafted him near the 1-2 turn.
Yeah, like you said, when you're equating out the 11th overall startup asset value, if you were in the 111 of a draft right now, you're looking at 2.5 first, maybe 3 firsts worth of value. 92nd overall, you're not even getting a first back. And we'll talk about the exact market values on where these guys are in a second. But Anthony Richardson, like we said, we kind of had to give the biggest explanation for because he was the highest investment outside of one guy. And that was a guy that was actually in his draft class. It's not even as much about we're concerned about him being a franchise quarterback. We're more so baking in the fact that is he going to be a fantasy football superstar? Does he use his legs enough? And ultimately, we saw both the efficiency and the high-end passing decrease this year for CJ Stroud.
Yeah, with these two quarterbacks, like if we just go through these, again, they lost value because of poor play. Is this a market overreaction for either of these guys? Do you think Anthony Richardson should be the 103rd overall asset, quarterback 27 off the board? Do you think CJ Stroud should be the 25th overall asset, 10th quarterback off the board? I think for me, both of these are accurate. Like we probably were overvaluing both players last year.
I would agree. And again, people might say, well, is that maybe caution for a guy like Jayden Daniels? And I think the biggest difference between that is Jayden Daniels, we already know is an elite fantasy scorer at the position. With CJ Stroud, he would have to get there. Realistically, to be a top 5 fantasy quarterback, he would have to have a Joe Burrow-like season.
Yeah, like, was it an overreaction to have CJ Stroud the 3rd overall player last year? I think it was. I think you could comfortably say he probably should have been a mid to late first round pick, most likely, after the rookie season he had. Again, he could have went out there and had a monster year, been one of the best Joe Burrow level quarterbacks in the league. I have him at 22 overall, and that includes the 101 rookie pick. So I actually do have a little bit more hope for CJ Stroud than the 25th overall asset that he is. I'm willing to spend a 2nd round pick on the guy. I do think he's probably going to bounce back. But Anthony Richardson, I do not have at 103rd overall. Let me actually take a look at where I have Anthony Richardson because I'm even further down than that, I'm pretty sure.
So when we include the 4 rookie picks, it ends up being 36 overall. So I have him 32 overall if we minus the rookie picks over on Flock Fantasy. Quarterback 12 for me in my dynasty rankings. Again, I understand the appeal. He's still young. He's going into his 3rd year. We expect at least the overall circumstances to improve around him, whether it was, Bobby Slowick's offense kind of running it out, Nick Caley obviously coming over this offseason from the Rams, whether it's Nico Collins staying fully healthy, having a big step, obviously 2 wide receivers out in the draft.
Christian Kirk, Noel, and Higgins.
Correct. Well, in the draft, and obviously Kirk via, I believe, either trade or free agency. But regardless, you got a better overall weapons core, I would say, now than when he dealt with last season. Now, people might say, well, he entered last year with Stephon Diggs, with Tank Dell. Obviously, the run out for both those guys. Diggs gets hurt in week 5. Dell, that catastrophic injury. I hope he somehow recovers someday because that was tough to watch. And we'll talk about him later on in this video.
Yeah, CJ Stroud, I think both of us had the same answer. For mid to late 2nd round pick is the price tag on Anthony Richardson. Are you buying or selling at that point? To me, I'm selling at that point. I actually think he's going to continue to go down in value because I have him 142nd overall asset and he's ranked 103rd on the market right now.
So you mentioned, real quick, you mentioned with Stroud, I would actually take both the 102 and 103 over him based on how I have my startup ranking set. He's valued very close to where I have Ted McMillan ranked, so I personally would need him for the 104. So if the price tag for me is at 102, I'd actually sell Stroud at that cost. But like you said with Anthony Richardson, if you can get a mid-second for him right now on Keep Trade Cut, late second right now over on the Flock calculator, I'd be willing to get out under that risk right now.
Yeah, I think that's definitely fair. The only rookie pick I have over him is 101. So I would be willing, if you were picking, let's say 102 or 103, thinking of taking Cam Ward over, Amarian Hampton or Travis Hunter or whatever, I would much rather trade that pick for CJ Stroud than actually make that selection. That's kind of my thought process behind it. But generally, I would say in a vacuum, if you wanted to take Travis Hunter in a vacuum, if you wanted to take Amarian Hampton or even Ted McMillan in a vacuum, I don't really disagree with that. I just think if you needed a quarterback with one of those 102 to 104 picks, it makes sense that you could just sell off that pick for CJ Stroud.
I think maybe I would just either rather go more expensive into like a top 7 or 8 guy, or I'd rather go cheaper into like the Trevor Lawrence range because Trevor Lawrence is cheaper on the market right now. Maybe you can get even cheaper. You go to the Dak Prescott, Baker Mayfield range. I think that would be my preferred option instead of using the 102 on Stroud.
Yeah, I think that's definitely fair. Let's talk about Kyler Murray, who's also a quarterback, so we can kind of just loop him in here. 19th overall asset last year. He's the 37th overall asset. Do you think that is an overreaction? Is that warranted, or do you think he should be going higher? To me, I think that's an overreaction, just because he is a rushing quarterback. I think he's worth taking the risk near the end of the second round, early third round, because he's a rushing quarterback. If he was not a rushing quarterback, I wouldn't be willing to take that risk.
So I'm more in the mid third is where I need to get him. I have him at 37 overall if you include the 4 rookie picks, 33rd overall if you don't include the rookie picks. But you can make the case for, like I said, I have CJ Stroud, Trevor Lawrence, and Jordan Love all one spot ahead to them back to back. Jordan Love at 34, Trevor Lawrence at 35, Stroud at 36, and Murray at 37. If you preferred Murray as the top of that group because you're in a win now build and he probably projects the best, he's going to be the highest in our rankings. If you guys watched our quarterback rankings over on the channel, we actually recorded in the Bush in-house studio just about a week or so ago by the time we're recording this video. You guys would see that we had Kyler Murray, I believe, quarterback 8 or 9 in our rankings.
Yeah. And I have, like, obviously we're going to differ on this. So Caleb Williams aside, because Caleb Williams is in this group for me in my Dynasty startup rankings, which we all know that you disagree with. But in the late second, early third round range, I have a lot of these quarterbacks mixed in with the Drake London, Nico Collins, Lad McConkey's, Travis Hunters of the world, where I have Caleb Williams, Bo Nix, CJ Stroud, and Kyler Murray in that range, just because Kyler did get back to his rushing upside that we'd seen him rush the ball for so many years, and then he tore his ACL, limited his rushing, and then last year he actually got back to his rushing tendency and still finished as a quarterback 1, and he's done that every season of his career. So Murray is the one guy that, I think things could go wrong, can continue to go wrong for him as a real life NFL quarterback. But I do think even if, for let's say the worst happens, he finishes QB 12 yet again, and the Cardinals move on from him because it's not a very successful season, plenty of other teams would be interested in Kyler Murray. So I feel like he's insulated by the fact that he's a rushing quarterback and has a big contract.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with that projection. And in fact, I do agree with the overall sentiment that he's a buy at this current market value, because as you guys will see aggregated over on the site, again, I'm not sure if we're going to throw a graphic up. You're the one editing this one, but Kyler Murray, if you can get him on keep trade cut value of 106, I'm doing it every single time and not thinking twice. And I do think if you have to pay the 103, depending on team construction, I'd be willing to send that. Again, I technically do have Amari Hampton slightly higher in my startup rankings. But like you said, if you needed a quarterback and you're stacked at running back, and maybe a guy has, Kyler Murray's his third quarterback and he's trying to get a vet or a young building block at running back like Amari Hampton, I'd be willing to make that exchange.
Yeah, this is why really I was so adamantly against taking Cam Ward in rookie drafts, is because anytime I wanted to take Cam Ward, 103, 104, 105, I would just go trade for CJ Stroud, Bo Nix, Kyler Murray, one of these guys, because that's what the price tag was. Yeah. And Cam Ward for me was the 106 in the class, which is why I was not usually getting him very often. I did get him in one league, but that was pretty much it. Quickly on Breece Hall, I think this is precisely the exact reaction that the market should have had, and I'm kind of in line with the market. I don't think we have to really spend too much time on him. I'm willing to take the plunge on him. I'm willing to take the risk on him, but I do think he should have went down to about a mid-third, late third round startup pick.
Yeah, there's no sugarcoating it. He's not in the same tier as the Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs range he was going last year. And if you drafted him over either of those guys, you should be considering it a whiff based off the expectation we had versus the reality that the 2024 season ended up being bringing. However, when you are objectively looking at Breece Hall, you're getting a 24-year-old running back with 2 separate years back-to-back of 95 and 76 targets. Obviously, we know the last 4 or 5 games down the stretch last year was dealing with that MCL sprain. If Breece Hall is fully healthy going into the year, regardless, whether it's on the Jets, maybe he gets traded in the offseason again. At this point, let's just temper expectations on that. Let's say he's the starter for the Jets this year. He's going to be a guy I'm all over in the third round of redraft leagues. And at 24 years old, if you can get him bouncing back to mid-range running back 1 status, showcasing that flash ability, explosive ability, ability in space as a pass catcher like he did the last couple of years, and what could be even potentially a better Jets offense. Vibes are better right now. Run game should be plenty efficient with Justin Fields coming over. I do think if you can get him here, we have listed as the 104 being the cost on keep trade cut, the 107 being the cost on the flock calculator. And 104 might be a little bit steep for me, but if you can get him for 107, that's about where I have Quinshon Judkins ranked. I think it's very fair. If you want a competitive running back this year, you're trying to compete for the championship, Breece Hall is going to be a guy I have ranked as a top 12 running back, while Quinshon Judkins is going to be more in that back end running back range this year.
Yeah, I would much rather have him than Judkins, and I'm a big Judkins guy. So that's where I'm at with Breece. I'd be willing to pay 105, 106 because I do still have him ranked ahead of Henderson as well. So if you were a competitive team looking for a running back that can help you right away, I would rather have Hall than Henderson.
Yeah, I would have Henderson higher, and I technically have Breece Hall and Judkins back to back, but it still goes to the point that if you want a competitive asset, I'm perfectly fine doing that.
Yeah, and if you consider it a next year's first round pick, like a mid to late first next year, and maybe even like a third just to sweeten the deal, I would be totally okay giving that up for Breece Hall. So I lean towards the buy side with him, but he definitely, you have to respect what happened on the market, I think. You can't rank him like top 20 still, like we were doing last year. And then quickly on McCaffrey, we talk about this all the time. You're only as good as your production as an aging running back. So when you go down with an injury like Christian McCaffrey did, and you aren't productive when you are on the field, you're going to lose a lot of market value. Like him being the 17th overall player, blanket statement across most leagues, probably more so a back end second, early third rounder for a lot of competitive leagues or a lot of like sharper leagues. You're going to lose a lot of market value. And the same can be said about Saquon Barkley, who's going this high in, more casual leagues as well. The second he goes down with an injury, the second he's not an elite fantasy running back, this is how quickly they lose market value. So let this be a lesson to people who want to take Saquon Barkley 17th overall.
Keep in mind,
go ahead.
That's with the redraft market already valuing him as a 1-2 turn pick, top 5 running back on the board. Like there was real pessimism earlier in the offseason. Like if you ask people what the sentiment of McCaffrey was in December, it wouldn't even remotely be this glowing. But the fact that we have data now that people are warming back up to him in redraft, people are growing on McCaffrey. So 112, if you can get him for that right now, I think that's actually a really, really good price to pay because I can only see that going up the closer and closer we get to August.
Dude, I would pay the 108, 109 or a mid to late projected first next year and not think twice about it, to be honest. If I was a competitive team, I would easily take Christian McCaffrey with that caliber of asset.
Like realistically, so I ended up moving him up recently to, I had him at the start of the offseason, like running back 15, running back 16. But I really realized it. If we're valuing Saquon Barkley in that tier 2 running back range, and you ask me right now, Saquon Barkley and Christian McCaffrey both played 17 games this year, who my answer would be who scores more fantasy points, full PPR, like that's way more of a toss-up than it should be for a guy that's probably going as a 102, 103 pick versus a guy you can get for the 112.
Yeah, I have him RB12, and I have him ahead of Jonathan Taylor and Josh Jacobs. And I mean, if James Cook and Kyron Williams get extensions, I would probably move them ahead of Christian McCaffrey. But for now, I mean, like the production for any of these running backs for the most part is short-term. And in short-term production land, McCaffrey's going to outdo these guys because of what he does as a receiver. So let's move into the top 50 dynasty assets from 2024 that lost value. Now, some of these guys lost a lot of value and are nowhere near what they were in 2024. You can see at the top there with Etienne and Pittman and Tyreek how much more valuable they were this time last year than they are right now. Let's talk about them in kind of buckets here. So the guys that lost value due to age and kind of injury as well. Dak Prescott, Tyreek Hill. Dak goes down for half the season. Tyreek's playing through injury half the season. I mean, we all know what you're going to say about Dak Prescott. So let's start with Tyreek Hill.
You see the jersey in the back.
Is it warranted that Tyreek Hill is now worth a early 2, late 1, maybe on the open market?
So I had listed here Tyreek Hill both on the flock calc as well as the keep trade cut calculator being around an early 2. And I do think it's fair because he did show, if you look at his yards per route run specifically against man coverage, clear signs of wearing down. Now, it's a chicken or egg situation. Is that because he's a little bit demotivated? Obviously, the offense not looking as good. He's dealing with his own injury. Obviously, he had that arrest. There's a lot going on in Tyreek Hill's life this past year to the point where you can very well make the case that maybe his head wasn't in the right place. And I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt when people have shown a Hall of Fame level of play like Tyreek Hill literally did in 2023. So I think it's a very, very polarizing question. I think if you're looking for a big time ceiling play, start 9, start 10 league. I mean, there's few people that if Tyreek Hill's playing at his top end ceiling can outmatch what he does in fantasy on a point per game basis.
All day, dude. All day. I'm buying all day. I'm like, he's going to be my highest rostered player on Underdog, and it's not going to be close because I have him ranked at 20th overall in redraft. I think he'll probably play 2 more years. But dude, you get legitimate needle moving production from a guy like Tyreek Hill. You put the fear of God into your opponent when you have Tyreek Hill in your lineup. And I still think that's true. Now, did he show some signs of decline? Yes. Maybe he's more of a 17 to 19 PPR point per game score than the 25 points per game he was giving people in 2023. But dude, this guy's legitimately a future Hall of Fame talent. And he was banged up badly last year and didn't have his quarterback half the year.
Yeah, and I think that's a good way to approach it as well, because when you even do look like weeks 10 on, I would say, because obviously Tua Tagovailoa missed sparing time in the first 10 weeks, in and out. Obviously, Skylar Thompson, Tyler Huntley, like it was just an absolute mess of a quarterback situation. But you do start seeing the double-digit point weeks coming week 10 on. So the way I look at it is, if we can just get the guy that can command a 14 target week and the guy that was on a legitimate touchdown tear down the stretch, and just combine them on a week-to-week basis like we know Tyreek Hill is capable of, you're getting a top 5 level wide receiver projection.
Yeah, and to me, that's worth a mid to late first, and he is not worth that right now. So you can get him for cheaper than that. You are only allowed 25 seconds to talk about why Dak Prescott is undervalued. From my perspective, I'll just quickly go first. Dak Prescott going down with injury and being 30 years old is why he lost value. That's why he lost value. Everybody, I think, recognizes that he should be at least considered a good buy low candidate for contending teams needing quarterback help. Because if you don't have a needle moving quarterback right now, and you can get Dak for, I mean, the price tag is low enough. Like you can get him for a late first round pick, a singular late first round pick, according to Keep Trade Cut market value. We on the site, all the experts have him ranked 106, and the market has him ranked 112.
So let me ask you this question. Dak Prescott has played 16 plus games in 6 of his, 10 years in the league? 6 of his 10?
Yeah.
5 of those 6 years, he's been a top 10 quarterback in fantasy. And we're getting that as a quarterback 21 or 22 on the market.
And he just got a receiver upgrade in George Pickens, too.
Yeah, and he's currently the highest paid quarterback in the league. So it's like you're getting the whole mixture. Like you said, George Pickens coming in, finally returning healthy this year. First round investment on the offensive line. Yeah, sure. Is Brian Schottenheimer, is he Ben Johnson? No, he's not fucking Ben Johnson. Guess what? Dak Prescott has led 2 number 1 level offenses in the past 3 years when he's healthy. And I'll tell you what, Mike McCarthy was the coach on those teams.
Yeah, and he did it with Kellen Moore too, and he did it with Jason Garrett. Like he's done
Scott Linehan,
he's done it with anybody. So yeah, those aging guys, man, like especially those 2 guys in this territory, I think are excellent buy lows for late first round capital.
And the site respects Dak a little bit more. I would say 106 is probably about a fair price tag for what Dak gets you. When somebody's maybe thinking about taking the Cam Ward pick, if you want to transition that to Dak, yes, you're getting a little bit of age, but you're getting a sure top 12, top 14 level point per game producer when he's healthy. However, on Keep Trade Cut, if your league is like this, like Keep Trade Cut, and you can get Dak Prescott for anywhere close to the 112 on the market, there should be no league where you don't have Dak Prescott on your team.
I agree. So let's blanket these poor play guys in here. Let's pick one guy that we go in depth on, because I think everybody knows the story. Jalen Waddle,
we can group the tight ends together.
Value. Travis Etienne, Michael Pittman, Kyle Pitts, Dalton Kincaid. The one guy to me that sticks out is Pittman, because I think Pittman is actually and Waddle too. Pittman and Waddle, I would say, we have more of a sample size to say that they're good wide receivers than what they showed last year. Both of them could have been dealing with injury. Waddle and Pittman both dealing with bad quarterback play. Like, given that they're both going for early second round price tag for Waddle, he's a little bit younger, mid to late second round price tag for Michael Pittman. I'm cool buying both of these guys if you're in need of wide receiver help.
And I'm not surprised, because you love the 27-year-old wide receiver twos. But all jokes aside, if you need to fill out your lineup, I don't mind it. It's just, for me, especially the early second, we know my thoughts. I would just rather re-roll on a guy like Luther Burden, like Matthew Golden, like one of the rookie tight ends in that range.
People have had their rookie draft.
RJ Harvey.
Are you paying an early second next year for these guys?
That's a little bit of a different conversation, because I do think the price tag might actually be closer to a mid to late first in 2026, because people will be realizing that the early second was basically like a late first in many years this year. So that is what I would be worried about. But if you can get them for, let's just say you have 3 second round picks and you want to give him what's potentially the best looking of those second round picks, I'm not against doing something like that, is basically the best way I'll put it.
Yeah. I would pay personally, if I got Waddle plus for very late projected first next year, I would be willing to do it. If I got Waddle and Brian Robinson back or something like that.
Yeah, if it's something like that, maybe you have to throw a 3 and then you get a better player than 3 coming back. I think that's fine. For me, too, though, personally, we'll talk about some of the veterans in the next range, but I think I'd rather just go cheaper and buy the pure point equity of, for example, Devontae Adams.
Yeah, I think that's totally fine. I mean, Pitts and Kincaid, we were probably certain that they're just not good players at this point in time. Like, that's why they lost value. We don't really have to brush over it. I mean, mid to late seconds is what they're worth. If you still believe, then go nuts. But I'm probably not buying in Dynasty. I'll get my shares in best ball drafts where they're very, very cheap. And then Etienne is a polarizing one for sure because he could get traded. If you look in totality, Travis Etienne has been in our lives as a football player, college and NFL, for what, 7-8 years? He's been very good for most of that time.
Like 5 of them.
Like, he's been very good for most of that time. Last year could have been an outlier. I think you can definitely argue that Etienne is a better running back than what he showed last year.
I think my question with him is, I was very high on him after 2022 because you saw a guy that legitimately averaged 5.1 yards per carry, was efficient on his targets, looked like he was going to be like a Jahmyr Gibbs level projection. And then even when he got the sustained workload, like, yeah, he was the RB3 overall in fantasy points in 2023. You can check up what the point per game average would have been on that for him in 2023. But you do see the efficiency go down a fair bit. And then the efficiency goes down even more this past year. I think the efficiency itself is a candidate to go back up with Liam Cohn. The problem that I have, though, is what exactly is Travis Etienne's talent level in relation to Tank Bigsby and Bashal Tutin in his respective backfield? Because if he does get an opportunity, like, I think he could potentially access what we saw earlier career Travis Etienne be, because this has been a guy that's been a third-round pick in best ball drafts before. But like you said, it's just so polarizing because if we get the Etienne of the last 2 years, I don't think he even has remotely a starting caliber workload this season.
Yeah, I think like the median for him, obviously the nuts is that he gets like traded and he gets to be a starting running back somewhere else. Yeah. I think the median for him is that the Jags keep all 3 of these guys, Etienne, Bigsby, and Tutin. It is a complete headache for fantasy. It's a 3-way timeshare. Maybe Etienne starts the year as the starter. Tutin becomes the starter down the stretch. Maybe Bigsby gets some games. But if Etienne is like a 4.8 yards per carry guy because it's a more efficient offense and he's able to get back to his efficiency, does he get a DeAndre Swift level contract in free agency? Like, that would be my one thing with Etienne is, even if it's muddy this year, what if it's not muddy at 26 and a half years old, 27 years old next year, going into free agency? That would be interesting to me if he got a starting role to some other team.
He could, but the question I ask you is, if you have him on your roster right now, are you taking the risk of that potentially happening? Are you cashing him in on a running back that you know is going to give you point equity this year, even if they're an older projection?
For a mid to late 2, which is what I'm getting for him right now on the trade market, I'd rather hold.
Now, let me ask you, what if it was a veteran running back instead? What if you have the option for another vet running back worth about a mid to late 2? Let's say in
Aaron
your
Jones,
inbox right
James
now,
Conner, David Montgomery, Brian Robinson. I would rather have them.
That's what I was going to point out. So it's polarizing because I also would rather have his teammate Bashal Tutin. So I very well think his range is the late second. It's just a matter of, if you have Etienne on your roster and you don't want to cash in for a pick, I would rather try to utilize a James Conner, an Aaron Jones, like just a running back projection. I feel good slotting in my running back 2 role this year, even if they're older.
I think the problem is who's giving you that, because you got to find a buyer for Etienne, man.
Well,
like, nobody's going to want him.
Well, that's why I would take the pick, because I think the pick is more likely to get you one of those veteran running backs than Etienne himself is. So if you can get a late second for Etienne right now, I would do it simply for the liquidity aspect.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely a fair point. If you like literally intended to flip that mid to late second right into Aaron Jones right after you make the Etienne trade, I think that's definitely fair. Yeah. But generally, I think you're not going to find very many buyers for Etienne. And in that instance, I'd be okay holding, because the offers I've gotten for Etienne, because I do have shares of him because I was more like very high on the play, I'm getting early 3 offers.
Yeah. Yeah, and an early 3, I think, is a little bit more of a debate. That's actually exactly where the flock calculator has them, and I'd have to actually pause and think about that before I make the decision. Because at that range, it's like, would you rather Etienne or re-roll on like a Dylan Sampson type?
I'd rather have Trav.
A Harold Fannin type. Like, that's about the range of the early 3rd that you're getting. Jaden Blue, maybe, if somebody's optimistic on him. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's usually what the early 3rd range of your rookie drafts are looking like right now.
For sure. And then let's talk about these injury guys. These guys are definitely all more expensive. And I feel confident that these 3 players are good players. I'm worried about concussions with 2 of them, Olave and Tua, as the guys that are their depressed market value is as a result of concussions, and Brandon Aiyuk a result of an ACL tear. Of these 3 guys, is there one that you think is a better buy than the other 2?
Well, I mean, I just think if you're getting a starting caliber quarterback for a 2nd-round pick, I think that's a very worthwhile price tag to pay. I would rather have Tua Tagovailoa than Jackson Dart, for example. So if you can make that transition, I'd be willing to do that for Tua Tagovailoa. I get it. Like you said, The concussions are the reason why he ranks at the back end of the quarterback tier range after the likes of, Baker, Dak, etc. But if he didn't have those concussion issues, you could make the case that because of his age, he's closest to that top 15, top 16 range. So for me, if the cost is an early second, like early seconds miss all the time, if I can get a quarterback that when healthy can give me 18, 19 points per game, I think that's a worthwhile cost.
Well, and we talked about it when we did the redraft quarterback rankings. Baker Mayfield, as much as I love him, is going quarterback 6 in redraft. Yeah. And you can make the argument that when healthy, Tua can outproduce him.
Well, and I think that's the thing every year we see. The top 4 guys at the quarterback position, especially if they can run, pretty sicky in terms of year-over-year turnover rate. A quarterback 6 to 11 on a year-to-year basis, dude. How much turnover do you see in the rankings?
Well, it was Prescott, Purdy, Jordan Love, CJ Stroud in 2023. And then last year it was Baker Mayfield, Bo Nix, different guys. Like it is a lot of turnover, especially if you're just a pure
next year, Drake passer. May, Caleb Williams, it's insane.
Well, and if I'm high on Tyreek and I think Waddle can bounce back, then I probably should be higher on Tua as well. Yeah. Aiyuk to me is I think he'll be a stud once he's healthy. The question is, what is his progress and how well is he coming back? It sounds like he's progressing towards potentially playing week 1. Of the 3 players here, I think he's the best one as well when fully healthy. So if all it costs you is a late 1, early 2, I think he's a fine buy for a 1-year punt out of the startup type of team.
See, he's polarizing to me because when he's healthy, I think you can make the case like he'd be ahead of the other 27-year-old projections like, Zay Flower, or Zay Flower's not 27, but you know what I mean? Like the mid-range wide receiver 2s.
Yeah, I'd rather have him than McLaurin, than Metcalf, than
well, that's what I mean. Like
I'd put him ahead of Smith even too, like Devontae.
That's what I was going to ask you. Like a point per game projection, you're taking him over a lot of guys. He's probably going to be close to the wide receiver 15 range. It's just the issue that I have is what's the immediacy of it? What is his market retention? Because we have seen him I've seen in leagues, people put him on the market at times and not even be able to fetch worth a second for him. So it's like the volatility is scary.
He's weird. He is the type
at the 112 I would pass.
Yeah, he's the type of dude to me that you have to be like, okay, what happened last year, even before his injury, because he was 8.9 fantasy points per game. Like he was not good before last year. He's the type of guy to me that I look at and I'm just like, the vast majority of his career, he's been a really good receiver. Like he's been a second team.
I thought he was a top 8 overall wide receiver in the league in 2023.
He was 1,300 yards on only 105 targets. And now Deebo Samuel is gone and Kittle is old and McCaffrey's banged up. Like I feel so good that if Brandon Aiyuk was playing at his full health, people go, oh, what about Ricky Pearsall and Juwan Jennings? Like, give me a break, dude. Like a healthy Brandon Aiyuk playing at a high level is way better than those receivers.
Well, let me ask you, because theoretically, if you're baking in that there's more target competition with those two, George Kittle is the most.
I disagree. I think Deebo's bigger target competition than all of those guys.
I would say Juwan Jennings plus Ricky Pearsall is more target competition than Deebo. On top of that, if Kittle and McCaffrey are healthy, you're looking at 100 targets plus for each of them on a team that maybe throws the ball 500 times. I think that would be the counterpoint to Aiyuk.
It is.
But like you said, when he's healthy, I think he's a top 8 overall wide receiver talent. It's just the issue that I have is the 112 is no discount. That's what I'm looking at it as. The 112, like I would need to get him for like more of an early to mid projected 2026 2 to feel confident. At that point, maybe if I have to add like a 3, I'd be willing to do that. It's just it's tough for me to spend first round equity on an injured 27-year-old receiver.
Yeah. So this is a quote from Reception Perception.
Yeah.
From 2023. When he was 96th percentile against man, 91st against zone, and 97th against press.
Mm-hmm.
When you put Brandon Aiyuk through the reception perception microscope and take in the full results of the player he's become, it's time to graduate him into the truly elite tier of wide receivers. And I think I was right there too. And he was worth a 103, 104, 105 rookie pick last year.
I just don't think at 27-year-old you're getting enough of a discount because how severe the injury is, on top of already being on a situation where even when he was healthy, he didn't peak past 114 targets. I think we have to bake that in.
Yeah, no, we do. You're right. To me, at 112, 201, 202 in a 2025 pick or a mid to late projected first, and I get Aiyuk plus back in return, I'm cool with it. I understand there's going to be some volatility, especially if he doesn't look the same right away and maybe he's not the same level of explosiveness and that kind of thing. I'm willing to ride the volatility if I'm in a 1-year punt or retool situation.
Yeah, and ideally in this type of situation, maybe you can get Aiyuk plus a future 2 back if you're on the clock with the 112. Like that, like if you can get like any type of insulation, I think that's worth it. It's just the issue. If you're getting no insulation, would I swap that pick straight back up for a 27-year-old off an injury? I mean, like you could tell me this guy was averaging 20 points per game before, and I'd be hesitant. But the fact that he was only a wide receiver 14 peak kind of makes me a little bit nervous.
Honestly, dude, I think if he was having a monster year before the injury, we would be talking about him exactly the same as Rashee Rice.
I see the difference though is Rashee Rice, even when he was healthy versus Aiyuk when he was fully healthy, there's a difference in terms of points per game, and there's a difference in terms of potential projectable volume. And Rashee Rice is a few years younger.
If Aiyuk was 18 points per game before his injury, we now have like a 4-year sample of him being an elite NFL receiver.
Yeah, but one's 23, 24, and one's 27.
Right, but 4-year sample of elite receiver at 27 is probably about equivalent to breakout candidate 23, 24-year-old wide receiver.
That's not how the market usually views those guys.
No, but AJ Brown is valued around the same as Ladd McConkey.
Yeah, and I mean, as off as AJ Brown is in terms of his team's passing volume, he still has a season with over 17 PPR points per game. Have we seen that from Aiyuk?
No, but we might have if he before his injury, if he was averaging 18 points per game or something. He's not. Yeah. So obviously we can just wish cast all we want. But I don't know. My thought process is if we wiped everybody's memory clean and told people you can get Brandon Aiyuk even off of an ACL tear for an early second round pick, I think people would be doing it actively.
I have a hard time seeing, like, again, I would think his ceiling is higher than what he's displayed because the team might throw the football more with McCaffrey getting older. Obviously, Purdy taking another step. He's going to get paid.
Well, they did throw the football more. And now that with the contract, they might be thinking he's got to carry the ship kind of thing too.
That would be the upside case, but it's still tough for me to keep overlooking the fact that his peak is less than 16 points per game and he's 27 off an injury.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. That's totally fair. I think we've all known he's better in real life than he's been better in fantasy in terms of what he's been so far in this point in his career. Chris Olave, I think it's pretty cut and dry. If you can get him for a late first, I'm okay taking the risk at that point because even despite the bad offense, even despite the concussion issues, I mean, the guy was a second round redraft pick in back-to-back seasons last year. Like, again, if you wiped everybody's memory clean and told people that you can get Brandon Aiyuk Chris Olave in the 6th, 7th round of redraft leagues and trade for him in Dynasty when he's 24 years old for a late first, like I'm cool doing it, man. Like I'm totally cool taking the risk on Olave.
So for the record, Brandon Aiyuk, I have him close to that, 203, 204 range. Like I said, the 112 to like even the 202 for me is like
again, I would focus more on next year's picks because I think most people have had their drafts already.
Yeah, I was just saying in relation. And you mentioned Chris Olave. So Chris Olave, I currently have ranked just above that range. I have him as my wide receiver 28. You mentioned I'd be willing to throw, a mid to late first at him pretty reasonably. If you're a contending team, I think he's a fine option, full PPR. You need him as the wide receiver 3 on your team. I think that's reasonable. However, there is the risk, like you said, with Tua Tagovailoa. Chris Olave as well has had 4 concussions in his 5 years in the NFL. So there is a risk level there. Obviously, on top of that, the Saints offensive projection, to say the least, is one of the worst in the NFL. Like, would you be at all shocked? Would you be at all shocked if they were the least scoring offense in the league? Lowest scoring offense?
No, I would not be shocked. But my thought process is he's the 73rd overall player on the market right now. I have him at 68. And in terms of I think this is a very valid comparison, not because they wore the same number at the same school. But if you're a competitive team picking 108 in your rookie draft, would you rather have Emeka Egbuka or Chris Olave? I already know Chris Olave can command a 30% target share. So that's kind of the trade-off of undergoing the concussion risk.
Yeah, I would take Egbuka in that instance.
That's fine. If you're rebuilding, that's totally cool. But for me, if I was a competitive team who had the 108, I'd be fine trading it for Olave, but he ain't even worth that. You can get him for 111, 112.
So I have Olave closer ranked to the wide receiver 28 right now. Again, I think Olave is obviously a really good talent. It's just the issue, of course, with the offensive projection, with the injury concerns in terms of the concussions. On top of that, we did see Rashid Shaheed have a significant role when they were both on the field together. So I do think that has to bake into his overall bottom end.
Look at the whole body of work with Olave, though, is my point. His whole career in the NFL, he's been a stud, and he was a great prospect.
No doubt. Again, I think he's got the upside to be at 24 years old more productive than he has been. But we also have to acknowledge, like Brandon Aiyuk, it's just not significant production. Like Chris Olave's 2023 campaign comparatively is similar to like what Devontae Smith is getting you. And again, that's not a bad thing. That's just my own macro take on what I value in Dynasty. I'd rather prioritize the upside in this range.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that you can pull up stats for that are like,
Yeah.
This is one of them. Jared Smola, Draft Sharks, great Twitter follow, said Chris Olave has seen 40 plus targets and averaged 2.05 yards per route run in each of the last 3 seasons. Only other 4 receivers can say that: Justin Jefferson, AJ Brown, CD Lamb, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like you can pull up a million stats like this on Chris Olave.
How many points did he score though?
Last year?
No. I'm just saying like that stat. He's with those 4 receivers. All those 4 receivers have like a 20-point per game projection. How many points did Chris Olave score?
14.5 PPR points per game.
That's the difference.
Last healthy season in 2023.
Like I think Devontae Smith is probably a top 12 overall wide receiver talent, but given the situation, I don't think he's got a 16, 17, 18 point per game ceiling. I think Chris Olave is similar to that aspect. It sucks because I think from a real life talent perspective, those guys are legitimate, wide receiver ones in different situations. Obviously, Chris Olave is a wide receiver one, but he's doing it in a bad situation. Like if he was in a situation where...
Well, he could be. Here's the other thing with Chris Olave. He's up for a contract extension. Mm-hmm. He's been reportedly on the trade block, and the Saints could have the first overall pick in the draft. That's a couple different outs for him to have a better quarterback going forward.
Potentially. Again, we'll see what ends up happening. For me, because I haven't seen consequential production, because we do have the lingering concussion concerns, I would rather re-roll into one of the rookie receivers, which is why for me, specifically in relation to 2025 picks, I would need Olave closer to an early second because, like I said, I'd rather re-roll on the rookies in this class.
Yeah, I guess when I look at it, I go, who's he ranked around in my startup rankings? And I'm like, dude, when healthy, he's way better than these guys.
Talent-wise, maybe.
I'm like, he's going near, Jonathan Taylor. I mean, Jonathan Taylor's a running back. That's that example. But like Odunze, Metcalf, those type of guys, I'm like, I would take Olave all day, especially at 24 years old.
Question though, Bush. He might be more talented than all those guys, but does he score more points than all those guys?
No, but we know that the NFL changes quickly. Like, he could have the first overall pick quarterback this time next year.
What was the first thing you said when we started this video? Past production is the most predictive thing for future production.
Right. And past production was 1,100 yards, 5 touchdowns, and a 30% target share.
It was sub 15 PPR points per game.
It was. Yeah, it was. But again, he had a backup quarterback half that year.
Yeah, no doubt. And he's probably going to have a backup quarterback starting all year this year.
I know. My thought is just that if I'm rebuilding, if I'm a 1-year punt, I'm cool investing in Chris Olave. I get it's risky because of the concussions, but I'm cool doing it.
I think it's reasonable. I'm just obviously playing devil's advocate for those of you guys that are maybe in a situation where you have all these picks built up, regardless of whether you had your draft yet or haven't had it yet, regardless. Just kind of equating the valuations on the market.
For sure. So 10 more players that we're going to talk about here. These guys were going between pick 50 and 75 in startups last year. And you're going to be like, holy crap, these guys were going how high? When you look at this list, Tank Dell, Jonathan Brooks, and Isiah Pacheco, all injury related.
Dead assets.
I mean, Dell and Brooks are essentially dead assets right now. I guess let's start with them because they're like worth the least right now. They're like outside the top 150 assets in terms of startups. Are you at all interested in floating an early 3rd round pick for either of these guys with the hope that they get back healthy? In 2026,
Dell and Brooks?
Dell and Brooks. In 2026, a 2026 early projected 3rd, would you at all be interested in sending that pick away?
You mean early 4th, right?
I would.
I'm not paying any 3rd for those guys.
No, I think it's possible that come 2026 NFL season, they're starting to get a little bit more hype in terms of what they're worth on the open market. So I think from the profitability, you send a mid to late projected 3rd for them now, and you could sell them for maybe even a late 2nd come 2 years down the road or a year down the road. I think it's an interesting topic of discussion if you have 7 3rds in 2026.
So we got the vote of confidence for Tank Dell from his team to the point where they traded for a veteran wide receiver and drafted 2 rookies on day 2 of the NFL draft. And we got the vote of confidence for Jonathan Brooks when they signed Chuba Hubbard to an extension, drafted a 4th round running back, and signed a part-time running back with Rico Dowdle in free agency. We got the votes of confidence for both those guys. And let's just say they are not appealing to say the slightest if you have them. You mentioned early 3. I wouldn't pay any 3 for those guys. If you want to throw a 4 at them because you love their prospect profiles, you love Dell's 1st-year profile, go nuts because a 4th isn't consequential. Dude, there's way too many league winners that I see pop up in the random 3rd round area to the point where why would I spend that on a dead asset? Like realistically, my path to accruing value on Brooks and Dell is then to return on a timeline that's probably closer to 2027 than 2028 than 2026.
I don't know. My thought process, that's where like Jalen Hyatt goes in rookie drafts. So I'm like,
or Tyrone Tracy.
I'd throw a late projected 3 at either of these guys personally.
bro.
Not this year, but a 2026 late projected 3.
You're not going to see that 3 back for 3 years once you trade it
I mean,
away.
probably not, but I think there's enough there that maybe the Carolina Panthers view Brooks, by the time he's going to be ready
Where's
to be
his
healthy,
path to playing time?
well, Chuba Hubbard's going to be 27 and
There you
also
go.
has an out in his contract by the time he's ready. And they drafted Brooks knowing he was a long-term play anyways.
Yeah, and that was an ACL ago.
It was. And I'm not saying he's a great buy right now. I'm saying if his price is the basement, I'd be willing to throw a 4th at him.
That was an ACL ago and a Chuba Hubbard 5+ yards per carry year ago. Actual consequential pieces. The old pieces. Yes, they are old, but they're guys that are going to give you production this year. They were going higher last year. It's no secret because they were a year younger. And this is what happens a year later when an older asset gets even older. Devontae Adams, like you guys can see on the chart right now. I mean, you can read that out, but we have Devontae Adams going from the 75 overall ADP down to 104 in this calendar year, dropping 29 overall spots, 10 spots at wide receiver. And then, like I said, with the other the other old asset here, we have Travis Kelce dropping from 56 overall to 133 overall, tight end 7 to tight end 16 on the market. So Corey, on the market, Devontae Adams, keep trade cut has as a 2025 mid-second. Flock calculator as at a 2025 mid-second as well. Then you also have as Travis Kelce, keep trade cut early 3rd this year. Flock calculator mid-3rd this year.
Yeah, I mean, I have Adams as a top 3-round redraft pick. If all it cost me was a mid to late projected 2nd next year to go get Devontae Adams, I would do it and not think twice about it. And I know you're not going to disagree. You're not going to agree with this. I would pay an early 3rd for Travis Kelce and sleep like a baby doing it if I needed a 1-year rental at tight end, because I legit, he finished as top 6 tight end last year, and I get he's 35 years old and he probably only plays 1 more year in the NFL, but the dude's probably going to be a top 7 or 8 tight end project. He's literally my tight end 6 in redraft this year. He's going to be the Joe Mixon boring tight end who randomly catches 97 balls and has, 800 yards and, adjusts himself from 3 touchdowns to 8 touchdowns. I think he's going to be very much a value on the dynasty market and also in redraft leagues if he's going to go in the 8th, 9th round of best ball.
Okay, Unk. No, I'm kidding.
I was in on Kelce last year. Obviously, he didn't have the greatest season. He was 12 fantasy points per game. But I think people are pretending he was useless. He was
pretty urine down the stretch, though. I had him in a couple leagues.
He was bad down the stretch. He was absolutely not good down the stretch. But my thought process is the dude can still play, and even if you're only getting 1 year out of him, that's worth an early to mid 3rd on the open market, in my opinion.
I'm about closer to a mid-3rd. I think once Mason Taylor and Terrence Ferguson are off the board in your rookie drafts, if you want to send the 303, 304, I think that's about reasonable where I'd have Travis Kelce. I currently have him in a tier with Dalton Kincaid, Dallas Goedert, Pat Freiermuth, guys like that. And admittedly, the reason why he's even there is because he's a top 8 or so redraft tight end for me this season. So with Travis Kelce, again, it's not pretty. You're betting on potentially Patrick Mahomes having a resurgence in terms of the passing game. I don't know. It's just, I don't see much of a path for him to being a top 3 point per game tight end, but I also don't see a path if he's healthy for him being tight end 17 in points per game.
Yeah, my thought process is this. If you already had your rookie draft and let's say you struck out at tight end, you don't really have a good option like Dallas Goedert's your starting tight end or something like that, and you have an early projected 3rd from a rebuilding team next year, and you wanted to fire that off for Travis Kelce to help you win a championship this year, I could stomach that no problem.
Yeah, again, like I said, for me, it'd be closer to a mid-3rd. We'll go on to the next year.
Would it be a mid-3rd next year? Because you keep referring to 2025 thirds. I'm not talking about Ferguson and those guys. I'm saying you had your rookie draft already. Would you send an early 3rd next year?
If I had 3 third-round picks next year, I'd send the 2nd most desirable one.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
So the middle range one.
Yeah, for sure. Let's rattle off these poor play guys. Rachaad White, still young, but definitely not a good workload at the moment. But people will probably be shocked to know that Rachaad White was still a top 24 running back at PPR points per game last year.
If you took his whole season versus Bucky's whole season, didn't Rachaad White actually outscore him?
Let me actually look.
If you take their whole seasons.
No, he didn't outscore him, but he was RB23 in points per game. He had 12.5 PPR points per game, and I think Bucky was 14.4 last year, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, was it actually that? Okay.
Yeah.
Let me.
But he caught 51 balls last year while sharing the backfield with Bucky Irving, and he had 9 touchdowns as well. He's also kind of like Etienne in the fact that he could sign another contract after this year, get traded, something like that. He will not be back with Tampa Bay. So I don't think you need to be worried about Bucky Irving being a long-term pain in the ass for him. The question for Rachaad White is like, can we get him? Like if he was on the Cowboys where Javonte Williams is right now, I think we'd all be excited about it.
Yeah, no, we definitely would be. If Javonte Williams is going as like an 11th round best ball pick right now, I think Rachaad White would have even more optimism, because I can comfortably say at this point that we have a defining skill set for Rachaad White, which at this point, unfortunately for Javonte Williams, like he was inefficient as a receiver. He was inefficient as a rusher. Like at least if Rachaad White was at the Cowboys, they would be a pass first team and he'd probably be a shoe-in for 70, 75 targets. So that would be the bull case for him. That's actually why people are optimistic, for example, on a guy like Jaden Blue, because the access to a high leverage passing game is there with Dallas. And you could very well make the case, if this is a 1-2 punch committee with Bucky getting more of the efficient running opportunities, Rachaad White getting, the pass down type of opportunities, third down opportunities out of the backfield. I mean, you guys on third down love throwing the football anyways. And we've seen multiple occurrences where Rachaad White has flashed 8 target, 10 target, 11 plus target upside on a given week.
This is going to sound outrageous, but why the fuck is David Montgomery thought of in any more positive a light than Rachaad White?
That might be the Buccaneer bias,
but like, think about it. David Montgomery on an offense now that loses Ben Johnson, their center retires, Gibbs is an ascending player, Bucky's an ascending player. Rachaad White gives you way more on third down than what David Montgomery did. I get David Montgomery scored 12 touchdowns last year and had 15 points per game and all this kind of stuff. But in terms of wipe the slate clean to some degree, what is the projection this year? Not last year, not in years past. What is the projection this year? And from a dynasty perspective, he's also younger. What is really the difference in projection for David Montgomery? Like 2 points per game in fantasy? Like I wouldn't be shocked if for him and Rachaad White were a lot closer than people think. So, both of them have the same insulated, if the starter goes down, they're going to be league winners type of upside as well.
Yeah, I think at this point, people are more confident in the talent of David Montgomery. Although you are making a valid point, because even when you just bake in the asset or the aspect of when Bucky Irving became the number 1 running back for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, we'll say after your guys' bye week 11 bye week, week 12 on, despite even isolated for that split, Rachaad White was the RB21, 12.5 points per game down the stretch. So it's not like he was giving needle moving production, but it's like 12.5 point per game versus where David Montgomery was at 14.7 point per game in that span. It's like, yeah, you're getting more points per game with Montgomery, but when you're comparing the opportunity cost, having to spend an early second versus on Rachaad White an early to mid third, give me the early to mid third on a guy that, like you said, you're buying for that ultimate upside if Bucky were to go down, if Gibbs were to go down anyways.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe Rachaad White in free agency signs a Javonte Williams-like deal where he's able to dodge the NFL draft to some degree and be a starter for an NFL team.
He's a more efficient rusher, too, last year.
Dude, he's a top 10 fantasy running back 2 years ago. Like, an NFL team is not going to give this guy, like, a 2-year deal to potentially be a cheaper starter for them. Like, I can see it happening.
Well, I just meant specifically as a rusher, too, because people were really clowning on his first couple of years, 3.7 yards per carry, 3.6 yards per carry. But it's like, he's quietly almost 4.3 yards per carry last year. It's like, it's not like he's giving you Jahmyr Gibbs level efficiency, but I mean, 4.3 yards per carry, you put over a starter's level workload. Again, obviously, I know that's not how it works in the NFL. Maybe that drops from 4.3 to 4.0 or 3.9. You're still getting a guy that's going to be able to do that in addition to getting 50, 55, 60 plus targets this year. And if he had a backfield to himself, potentially 70, 75 plus targets.
Yeah, I mean, I have him at 166 overall. He's going at 157, but I also probably have at least 15 to 20 rookie picks, including next year's and the year after that. So I would say I'm probably slightly above market on him. I'd be okay giving up a very late projected 2026 second if you had to. Maybe you get a piece back on top of Rachaad White for that. But anyways, let's move to the other guys here. Deebo, Andrews, Pacheco. All these guys, I would say, disappointed relative to expectations. I mean, Andrews had 11 touchdowns, but he was really bad at the start of the year. Deebo was kind of banged up, as he usually is. Pacheco, of course, missed most of the season, and then when he came back, wasn't very good. Of these three guys, because I think the price is about the same, Deebo, Andrews, Pacheco, you're probably paying about a mid to late second in 2026 for any of these guys. Let's say, in a vacuum, you needed running back, wide receiver, tight end equally. Which player would you be more likely to buy out of Deebo, Andrews, and Pacheco?
Deebo, Andrews, and Pacheco. I mean, like if you're desperate for a tight end, I don't think Andrews is the worst because you're getting touchdowns.
In a vacuum, you need all these positions equally, let's say.
I think Deebo would be the last one I'd go after.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think I'd probably pick him first, though. Like, if I was to send a mid to late second into the sun in 2026, I'm trading for one of these guys. I got to send a mid to late second for one of them. It's Deebo for me.
See, the reason why is because there's more alternatives at wide receiver I like than Deebo in this range, like a Devontae Adams. Whereas at the tight end range, like tight end and running back specifically are weird because the guys that are more expensive, like you have to pay up for past the Pacheco range, past the Andrews range. And then they're kind of like in their own area where, like, if you get cheaper, maybe you get down. Like, if we look at tight end, if you get cheaper than Andrews, you go down to like the K. Dotton, the Pat Freiermuth, the Dallas Goedert type of range. When you get cheaper at running back than Pacheco, you're going down to like Tank Bigsby, Zach Charbonnet, Jalen Warren, where it's like, I think Deebo by default would be my answer because there's just more wide receivers in that range I'd rather go after.
Yeah, he to me, the reason I would pick him is because I think if you said which one of these guys, because none of them are, you're not paying needle moving price tags for them.
Correct.
Which one of these guys scores at least 15 fantasy points per game next year? To me, the answer is Deebo Samuel.
See, I don't think that's fair specifically for the tight end because the reason why you'd be buying tight end Andrews
Okay,
there.
let's say 12. Did we adjust for tight end? It's 12 to 13 fantasy points per game.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's tough though, because I think when you're looking at Andrews specifically, the insulation to Lamar, like they're both probably going to be number 2 weapons on their offense and lower passing volume offenses. The difference we have evidence of Lamar cracking a 41 touchdown year. Like if Jaden Daniels had a 41 touchdown year, like he'd be worth a first plus over anyone on the market.
Yeah, I mean, I just look at Deebo being a top 12 fantasy wide receiver 2 years ago. Like, that's my only thought process is like the volume is a lot higher in Washington than it is in San Francisco. And if Deebo's healthy, which is obviously a question mark because he's never healthy, but if he is healthy, he's really good. Also, weird trend of Deebo Samuel's career is that in odd numbered seasons, he's also dominant. Every odd numbered season, he's always elite.
Well, I mean, you just said like a lot more. Like we saw last year in San Francisco, 455 attempts from Purdy in 15 games. We saw from Jaden Daniels 480 in 17 games. So the volume is pretty comparable.
Yeah, I guess that's definitely fair. I don't know. My thought process is that there's no, like they were throwing to fucking Zach Ertz and Austin Eckler and Olamide Zaccheaus last year, man. I think Deebo Samuel is much better than those guys.
I don't know, man. Ekbom, he's kind of the GOAT.
I don't know. We didn't even mention Pacheco here. Do you have any confidence? Because I've seen, the further we get away from the season, people are like, hey, Pacheco was going to like the early 3rd round and redraft last year. Should we maybe be thinking he might just be right back to his old workload?
Depends on the price. Like any 2, I'm not buying him for that. Like if you get to the early 3rd, I think that's where I'm more willing to bite the bullet because it kind of goes back to the point where, like I said, I would have Andrews number 1 and then Deebo and Pacheco would be a close 2-3 for me because there's just other alternatives that I would rather have. Like specifically for Pacheco, I mentioned like I would rather him than Deebo, but at the same time, it's like if I can get Aaron Jones, if I can get if I want upside Trey Benson, if I can get, DeAndre Swift even, who I feel more sturdy about his role. Like we had evidence proof down the stretch last year, injury or not, of a dusty Kareem Hunt out snapping by Isiah Pacheco. Like that, regardless of whether Pacheco was hurt or not, they pushed him back. They rushed him back to the field only for him to be the number 2 behind a washed up Kareem Hunt. Like that's got to factor in somehow. Again, I think Pacheco could be a needle moving player like he was 2 years ago. It's just that's fresh in our minds, man. And it should be like Kareem Hunt should not be outproducing him down the stretch.
No, but counterpoint as somebody who, again, if I was a heavy contender in a very deeper league format where Pacheco does matter if he ends up getting back to his full workload, I'd be okay paying a late 2nd round pick for this guy.
I think that would be the max.
Here's why. Here's why. This same injury affected Tony Pollard the same way. And Tony Pollard last year looked like a lot better of a running back. And Pacheco before the injury, you and I were huge Pacheco guys going into the year. And Pacheco before the injury had 79% of the snaps and 66% of the snaps in the game he got injured. 15 carries, 3 targets, 19 carries, 5 targets. Like the workload was huge for him. And I think the difference between him and Aaron Jones, for example, is that Aaron Jones is a 1-year rental. Isiah Pacheco is only 25 years old. If he has a great year this year and rushes for 1,100 yards, 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns, is a really solid running back, is he going to get an 80% opportunity share? Probably not, but he's the starting back for Kansas City, 65% opportunity share. Could they extend him? They could extend him.
They have money tied up in so many more important areas of their team.
What
I
if
would
he's
be
a
shocked
2
if they
for
gave
20 extension?
I think at this point they would rather just re-roll in the draft. We have already talked
They
about
haven't shown us that they're willing to do that, though.
They haven't shown us that they're willing to give Isiah Pacheco a full-time workload.
They have, though, last year before his injury and down the stretch in 2022.
And then Kareem Hunt factored in way too much down the stretch. They signed Elijah Mitchell and they draft a running back this year.
Yeah, here's my
I think that's my issue.
Here's my absolute last point. In the 2 games that he was healthy for, he got a huge workload.
Yeah.
In 2023, down the stretch, care to guess how many running backs outscored him? After week 4, when he took over the full workload and was getting 60+% of snaps.
We did the whole song and dance last year, which is why we loved him going into redraft.
But you do this for other players. You do this for Nico. In a small sample, he was this good and that kind of thing.
Go ahead then. Like I'm not taking that away from you. I'm saying the upside is there for him. I'm just worried about how the market's going to view him. And objectively speaking, they're a lot more unforgiving at running back than they are at any other position.
They are. But here's my last point on Pacheco.
Yeah.
Only Kamara, Gibbs, Breece Hall, Kyron Williams, and Christian McCaffrey outscored him week 4 onwards in 2023. Going into, if we stretch that into week 2 of 2024, he had a big workload going into that. This is an injury that's very
one of my highest drafted players last year.
Oh, yeah. I absolutely loved him last year. He's one of my highest drafted players as well. My only point on him is that there is nobody in his backfield that has any real significant investment. Is there guys that Hunt looked better than him and Rashard Smith maybe when he could be better than him and stuff? Sure. But a healthy Isiah Pacheco, the 2023 Isiah Pacheco is better than all those players.
Can I counter one?
Who?
Again, this isn't of the fact that I think this guy's going to outsnap Pacheco this year. But man, if we get a healthy Elijah Mitchell, I think he's
get out of here, dude.
Elijah Mitchell was really fucking good a few years ago, man.
Dude, Pacheco's been
I'm not saying
more recently than
I'm not saying he's gonna outscore Pacheco. I'm just saying when he was healthy, boy oh boy, that rookie year we're talking about a 963 yard in 11 game season.
Like 4 years ago, man. Andy Reid's going to give his starting running back a big workload. He did it with a dusty Kareem Hunt last year. So if Pacheco's playing like his starting running back, he's going to get a big workload. And that's my only point on him. So would I be okay setting a late 2nd round pick for him? I would, personally. Anyways, we don't even have to talk about the top 100 guys because we went really long on this regardless. Me and Danny, classic. Oh, we should only go 45 minutes on this video. Knew that wasn't going to happen. I'll give you 30 seconds, 45 seconds to give you the floor on any of these players. Watson, White, Levis, Cousins. I can't believe these guys were top 100 picks in Dynasty last year. Any of these guys for the cost that they're going for on the open market, which is nothing pretty much. Any of them interest you?
I mean, so the highest range you're looking at is probably about a mid-3rd for like some of the wide receivers in this range.
I think Diggs and Kupp may fetch late 2nd, early 3rd value.
Yeah, if the cost is a late 2nd, I'm all the way out. But if it's like a mid-3rd, I think that's more reasonable for me about what I would be willing to pay. My one, first and foremost, I think Cooper Kupp is way closer to Adam Thielen than he is to being some resurgent bounce back receiver candidate. So if I had the option, I'd much rather go Stephon Diggs. Sure, with Stephon Diggs, maybe you're getting a little bit of a knucklehead factor. Hey, he's smacking girls' asses on boats. He's passing out pink bags. Like the guy's having a great offseason for his own standard. Hell, he's taking pictures, taking videos with Cardi B. Like you do Stephon Diggs. Not going to change the fact that I think you're a knucklehead. But hell, if you're on the field and you're fully healthy off that ACL, Drake May needs a wide receiver 1. And I know you've been a wide receiver 1 in the past.
Yeah, and I think if we knew he was going to give you at least 15 fantasy points per game, he would be worth a mid-2nd at this point in time. Like that production's worth a mid-2nd for sure. My classic is I'd send a 4th round pick for Christian Kirk all day, every day, and twice on Sunday. Because, you talk about, I would rather just get, sure thing production like Jacoby Myers or something. Why not just find the next Jacoby Myers who you get for nothing, who can produce like a Jacoby Myers produced? And to me, Christian Kirk could have a 13 to 15 fantasy point per game season. And for a 4th round pick in deeper PPR leagues where you can start up to 6 wide receivers, he could find your lineup half the time, in my opinion. So Christian Kirk for a 4th round pick, sign me up.
Hear me out. I mean, if we're playing for a 4th round pick, I don't know. If we get a potential starting running back for a 4th, he could be the dustiest running back of all time, and I still think it's worth it. Because guess what? How many people out there you think fetched a 3rd for Kareem Hunt in season last year?
Oh, plenty of people. I bet there was people paying 2s for Kareem Hunt last year.
And if you think Javonte Williams started out as a Cowboy starting running back in the first 4 weeks of the year, and you got him for a 4th right now, that wouldn't be 100% guaranteed to go up?
Dude, if Javonte Williams was just not awful at football, that would be
pretty urine.
He's really bad, man. 3.6, 3.7 yards per carry. Like, other than his rookie season, we have no sample to say that he was good, and his North Carolina tape, honestly. So, man, I wish he was better than he is.
Hey, if he's urine for a 4th-round pick, I guess I'm the sponge in the fucking urinal.
Dude, I think it's equally likely that Miles Sanders wins out the job than Javonte Williams. Like, I think we have a bigger sample of Miles Sanders being a better running back in the NFL.
Yeah. Dude, send a 4th for either of them, because quite frankly, like, if they went out, maybe you don't do that right now. You want to do it closer to the season, sure. But, like, there's a difference between a 3rd and a 4th-round pick. I wouldn't give out 3rds willy-nilly. A 4th-round pick, hell, I'll make you sad one day and you want a 4th to make it up, I'll send that to you. You know what I mean? Like, a 4th.
Do you know how many RB2 in point per game seasons Javonte Williams has versus Miles Sanders?
2 versus 0.
0 versus 3.
Oh.
Miles has 3 RB2.
Was Javonte not an RB2 or better in his rookie season?
Nope.
He had like
10.8 fantasy points per game.
How? He had like 60 catches, no?
10.5 fantasy points per game.
Half PPR?
Full PPR.
Really?
He only had 22 targets his rookie season. Oh, sorry. I'm looking at 2022. I'm stupid as hell.
Yeah. You're tripping me, bro. His rookie season,
12.1 fantasy points per game, RB22. So 1 to 3 is the answer.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, because even when I said 0 for him, I'm like, wait, that's wrong, because his rookie year, he literally did.
He had 53 targets his rookie season. Yeah. So he was efficient through the passing game. But yeah, he's been bad ever since. And Miles Sanders, I mean, yeah, he's been banged up and hasn't been healthy and all this kind of stuff. But like, he's been good more recently than Javonte has.
No, you're not wrong. Like, literally the only difference between them is you're like, oh, well, Javonte Williams got a couple more million on the market. So it's like,
yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Just money is the issue there. So
realistically, even if you spend a 4th on them, don't cry about a 4th-round pick if they went and signed a Nick Chubb. Don't cry about a 4th-round pick if they went and traded for a Breece Hall, Travis Etienne, because that's still in the range of outcomes. Hell, their running back core right now is Jaden Blue, Javonte Williams, and Miles Sanders. So you can't rule out any move at running back.
Even if they were 80% of Rico Dowdle next year, they would be worth a 4th-round pick.
Oh, bro, if you're telling me we got a reroll and Rico Dowdle was back on the Cowboys this year, I think it would be more likely he rushes for 1,100 yards than it would be he rushes for under 800.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we are at a very brain rot portion of this video. If you guys made it this far, just comment down below brain rot or something. But anyways, like the video if you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel. This was kind of just like Market Watch, Wednesday. What day is it? Tuesday? Market Watch Tuesday that we kind of broke down. Guys said lost a ton of ADP from last year. Are we buying? Is it warranted? That kind of stuff. It was just kind of an off the cuff video, but let us know what you guys think of it. We're going to talk about some contentious players in Dynasty, guys that are, vastly different in terms of league to league. We're going to talk about those on Thursday. And it's going to be kind of the same relative format where we're kind of just going back and forth. Devil's advocate here, pros and cons there kind of thing. So definitely stick around for that. We'll be live tomorrow to break down some best ball drafts as well. Like I said, check out Flock Fantasy for all of our rankings. We made some reference to them in this video. If you want to use our trade calculator, my team's feature, all that stuff will be linked down below in the description. But with that being said, peace out. We'll talk to you soon.